Hide your wallets, hide your bank accounts, and hide your PayPals because these games are coming for your dollars. What up, Mini family? My name is Scott, the Miniature Maniac, and the world of miniature wargaming has been exploding these past couple of years with tons of new amazing games. Here are three that I am most excited for coming up in 2023. Yasfiga is a new game written and published by Black Site Studios, the folks responsible for Don't Look Back, a fun, horror-themed miniatures game. What hooked me into this game was I was walking around a show and the writer of the game called me by name and said, "Yo, Scott! You want a rulebook for a war game with the aesthetic similar to Annihilation?" And then he flashed this absolutely beautiful book at me, and I think everything went black because now I'm here and I apparently like this game. For real though, the print quality and design of this book is so jaw-droppingly gorgeous, and it immediately hooked me, and I was surprised to find a pretty compelling game system. First of all, the miniatures feature a low fantasy bent, which I am always in love with, and are cast in resin so the detail will likely be nice and crispy. Due to the setting, some of the aesthetics of the game feature natural elements because the land of Yasfiga is under the influence of the Bloom, a perpetual spring that poisons the land. That's where the Annihilation inspiration comes from. The combination of beautiful colors, trippy visuals, and a low fantasy setting actually reminds me a lot of the 1981 Excalibur movie, which also may or may not have influenced my decision to include this game in today's video. I have no shame. As far as actual gameplay goes, the game features alternating activations where players activate a single model or a small group of figures. It's played on a 2-foot by 2-foot board with dense terrain and a deck of cards to determine the success or failure of your various tests. No dice needed for this game, which obviously reminds me a lot of Malifaux. You build out a roster of characters by assigning stats and weapons similar to an experience in an RPG, which also reminds me a lot of Frostgrave, a game we played recently on the stream if you want to check it out. I'll have it linked below. Let's get more specific about what mechanics I actually like, however. Each character has 2 actions they can do each turn, or 1 complex action. I like this because in skirmish war games like this, you sometimes don't have 2 valuable things to do, so having a more complicated big action to do is appreciated. The game is played with a tape measure, and a thing that's always frustrated me about moving squads in war games with a tape measure is that it's highly inaccurate. You tend to move one dude and then approximate the rest. Coming from the world of Guild Ball, where everything is precisely measured with gauges, this has always kind of grinded my gears a bit. In Yasfiga, however, you move one character, and then everyone in the squad can be placed within 2 inches of that model. They built into the game a way to deal with this minor problem while also adding a little bit of extra strategy in gaining some additional movement. When rolling saves, you have 1 stat that applies to both magical and physical sources of damage, which is a good way to simplify the game. Having the 2 be separate would just complicate the game where it doesn't need it. What don't I like about this game, however? The game generates deployment, objectives, a twist, which is a positive or negative side effect of the environment, and side objectives from a deck of cards for each. My main issue with this idea is that it's hard to come up with a lot of interesting and balanced ideas to fill out an entire deck, so there's a high chance of drawing into a combination of features that make for a lame or unbalanced experience. This is something that I ran into while playing Warcry. I understand that this creates replayability, but I personally just want the main gameplay loop, which to me involves the objective of the game, to be compelling and not need to be randomly generated as a way of creating interest. I think models are going to die a lot in this game, which can cause some feel-bad moments. Because the deck of cards is used in the game, there's a lot of variance of outcome. Combat looks like this. You draw a card hoping to get equal to or below a stat value, and if successful, add the power of the weapon or spell you're using. And this becomes your net result. For what it's worth, the deck only has cards 2 through 10 for these types of checks. Your opponent must then draw a card higher than the value of your card draw plus boost to beat it and not take damage. You either beat that value and take no damage or don't and take all the damage, which can be pretty swingy. I would like to see a more graduated system where you take partial damage based on the card draw as opposed to all or nothing. The developers seem to have this issue in mind though, because there are several mechanics they added to the game to account for this, which I really like. First, you can push your luck once a turn and redraw a single card for any given test. Things like this are always good to take the edge off of the randomness of miniature war games. Secondly, models don't actually die in the game. They become downed, with a pretty reliable avenue to get them back into the game. I wish that games did this way more, like Judgment from Creature Caster or Rivenstone from Broken Anvil Minis. Yes, it's still very good for your opponent to down your models, but you at least have a way to get them back, and it creates this rubber banding effect that is very satisfying in games. Third, drawing a 10 will always defend an attack no matter what. Yasfiga seems like a good game, and I can't wait to try it out. For some transparency, of the 3 games in this video, this is actually the only one that I haven't sat down to play yet, but I am very excited to. Before moving on to the next game, let's hear a brief word from this video's sponsor. Apex Legends, my personal favorite battle royale video game, is being brought to life with a new board game featuring miniatures that will be live on Kickstarter on May 17th. Glass Cannon Unplugged, the developers of Frostpunk, the board game, are the guys and gals responsible for this manifestation. The game includes miniatures of all the original characters from the video game that fans have come to know and love, like Wraith, Bloodhound, Gibraltar, and Bangalore. Where my Bangalore mains at? The game also features terrain pieces and equipment effects that you'll recognize from your matches, such as supply crates and airdrops. Hoping for that 50 cal golden Kraber so I can miss a bunch and die trying to 360 no-scope some noobs. The models themselves are 40mm in scale, and the gameplay features skirmish mechanics that uses cards and also a grid for movement. The game interestingly doesn't use dice and instead resolves combat with a unique mechanic using a shooting track that simulates weapon recoil. The cardboard terrain is foldable, sturdy, and modular. The board game features mechanics that closely mimic the video game, such as a shrinking play zone that increases tension and forces player interaction, loot gathering, customizable weapons, and unique skills for each legend. Glass Cannon Unplugged also has planned expansions with additional characters, maps, and also game modes such as free-for-all and cooperative against the game itself. Down in the description below, you'll find a link to the Kickstarter campaign where you can get on the waiting list so you get notified the moment it launches. And it's worth your while, as every backer will receive a free Loba miniature. Thanks for watching this video, Glass Cannon Unplugged. Now back to the main video. Next on the list is Demonship, another game published by Black Site Studios, but this game was made by Malev, a miniature painter you might recognize from Twitch. In Demonship, players take on the role of a survivor trying to escape a spaceship infested with demons. The game is referred to by the creator as a microgame, a term that's new to me in the miniature wargaming world. It's played on a 6" by 6" grid-based board and is a solo play game that's very interesting co-op and versus modes that we'll get into later. You win the game by restoring power to the ship, engaging the emergency protocols, and escaping with your life through an evacuation pod. If the game feels cinematic, it's entirely designed to be that way, which is something that I really love. Also, like with Yasfiga, the design of this game from the ground up is amazing. The retro style of packaging with big, bold lettering and weathering reminds me of 80s sci-fi in the best way possible. It feels weird to mention the design of a game's packaging and rulebook, both for this game and the last one, but it can't be understated. The look and feel of the game is what initially hooked me. At Adepticon, I got a demo from the game's creator, Malev, and I immediately pre-ordered the terrain bundle, which features all the terrain required to play the game and a box that stores it all in a neat little package. The terrain comes pre-painted, but can absolutely be painted if that's what you're into. I love that this game lowers the barrier of entry by having this stuff pre-painted, even though I am a painter myself. One thing I really enjoy about A Song of Ice and Fire is that the models come pre-assembled in the box, so I can open them up and use them immediately in a game on that night. So having fully or partially complete components is always nice. It's a good thing that the terrain bundle was the only product available for pre-order for my wallet's sake, because this game has been rapid firing new stuff left and right, and it's all so delicious looking. Demon booty! Like with Yasfiga, you can play with your own models to represent the demons and Survivor, but Black Site Studios do also sell miniatures for these roles. As far as gameplay goes, it's highly agile. You set up a room, fight demons inside the room, trying to accomplish your primary objective based on where you're at in the gameplay arc. Once you clear a room and exit, you set up a new room based on a dice roll. With the included magnets and size of the board, setting up a new room is trivial and takes little to no time. As the game progresses and you take damage, your pulse increases, thus increasing the tension of the game. At the beginning of the Wits phase, which is the main phase where you take survivor actions and demon actions, you roll a number of dice equal to your pulse rate, which is kind of like your HP, but it increases while you get hurt. Values of 1 to 3 will be demon actions, and rolls of 4 to 6 are survivor actions. This creates very swingy moments, especially when you, the survivor, are more damaged and becoming frantic. Maybe you roll well and absolutely dunk on the demons with a ton of actions, or maybe the demons are gonna be the ones doing the dunking, with you as the ball. I would normally dislike this kind of mechanic because it's a 50-50 with no manipulation, but this game isn't competitive. It's like a single-player video game, which for me turns this switch off in my brain and allows me to enjoy the experience for what it is. A high-tension survivor experience on a spaceship crawling with demons. Come on, dude, yes! When taking actions with a survivor or demons, no dice are rolled. You just pick a relevant result and it's applied, so it's very straightforward. There are a lot of tests in the game, like opening crates or interacting with consoles, that are made harder by intervening demons, so they require a test on a 4-up with a D6. To mitigate this test, and also others like trying to find the right room in your demon portal twisted spaceship, you can exert yourself, which means you can increase your pulse to pass the test automatically. Just like with Push Your Luck in Yasfiga, this is a great way to take the edge off of the RNG of a D6. Lastly, if you, the survivor, happen to roll 3 6s while dodging demon attacks in any given room, you activate the Number of the Beast mode, which allows your character to briefly turn into Doom Guy, basically. You have to escape the ship before your pulse reaches 7 or perish in the void of satanic space. If you want to play this game against friends or combine your copy of Demonship with another player's in a co-op experience, the game has modes for both of those in the rule book, so you can spice it up if you like. The co-op mode is particularly interesting because when you activate the power in your ship, it affects the game state in another player's room. So cool. For me, Demonship represents something really exciting about miniature wargaming. It shows me that there's fresh, new ideas in the space. This is a solo play, micro war game played on a 6-inch by 6-inch board. What? It's just so different, and that has me asking the question, what are other different ideas we haven't explored yet? I'm reminded of a recent interview I had at Adepticon about game design with Sean Sutter, the developer of Relic Blade, who told me this.
Different video games have different things they offer, you know? So when I'm playing Chivalry 2 and hitting a guy with a big hammer, it's different than when I play an RPG and hit a guy with a hammer. And I want both those games, and I think the indie miniature scene can easily be that. I want to play a bunch of different types of games where their miniature collection is their Nintendo and our rule sets are game cartridges, and they're just playing tons of games for different experiences.
We as hobbyists have this idea that every game we play is an investment. And in many ways, it really is, because assembling and painting models, reading rules, heck, even playing the games are often massive commitments. We want to get mileage out of our monetary and time investment. We see a game as lasting forever, but with Sean's metaphor to video games, they don't have to. When I was tired of playing Hades, I stopped playing it, and that was fine. When I get tired of playing Demonship, I'll stop playing that too, and that's fine, because this game is showing us that we can have this fun demon dodging experience and not feel tied down to the game. What other games are going to come out in this space with a similar look and feel? It has me excited for the future. All right, on to the third game. Shatterpoint is a new Star Wars-themed game from Asmodee, developed by Atomic Mass Games, the makers of Marvel Crisis Protocol. Of the 7 games I downloaded at Adepticon, this one was my favorite. In this game, models are interestingly 42mm scale, which conversely makes all the terrain very large. It also means that these models won't work in Star Wars Legion, X-Wing, or Armada, 3 other Star Wars games owned by the same company. Kind of seems like a missed opportunity. While I do love the Star Wars universe for nostalgia-related reasons, I'm not really into the aesthetic a ton, but for me, Shatterpoint shines the most in its gameplay design, which is saying a lot. Atomic Mass Games could have just leaned on the theme of Star Wars and phoned in the design, but they really didn't. In Shatterpoint, each player alternates back and forth, activating either single characters or groups of models, similar to Yasfiga, which is where we run into the first thing that I'm not a big fan of in the game. The order in which you activate your characters is determined by a small stack of cards that is shuffled, so your order of activation is semi-random. I say semi-random because the game does have mechanics that give the player some agency to shift some of these things around, but largely I dislike this idea. In a strategic, competitive game, I'd prefer to choose the exact order. The goal of the game is basic objective capturing done over the course of 3 individual struggles. Between each struggle, the objectives and other elements shift around, which encourages strategic movement. The win condition track of the game is a super interesting mechanic that gives a worthwhile comeback mechanic without somehow feeling bad for the winning opponent, which to me is a stroke of genius. The struggle tracker has 8 slots on either side. As your opponent's models become wounded, you add a black momentum cube to your side. The clear cube in the middle of the track is used to record objective scoring. If I score some number of points by being near objectives and so on at the end of my turn, I move the clear cube closer to my side. The same is true for my opponent on their turn, which creates a great tug-of-war mechanic that reminds me of God Terror and also Seven Wonders Duel. You win the individual struggle when your token reaches your momentum cubes, so with each wounded enemy, the win condition becomes easier for you to achieve. In any turn after you move the clear cube and it's still on your opponent's side, you get to add a cube to your side, thus making it easier for you to achieve your win condition. If the clear cube is in the middle after you move it, both sides of the track gain a momentum cube. If you're killing people, your goals become easier to achieve. If it's a one-sided affair, the losing player's objective becomes easier to achieve without making it harder for your opponent, who is winning the game, to achieve theirs. Simultaneously, if there's a stalemate, the game is easier won for both players, increasing tension. Ugh, I love it! Whoever thought of this idea at Atomic Mass Games needs a raise. Speaking of killing people, the way it works in Shatterpoint is also very cool. When a character in the game takes damage, you put damage tokens on their card. As soon as you take damage equal to your stamina, you take a wounded token. Wounded models cannot take further damage and are hampered when trying to activate. When a wounded model does activate, it flips that wounded token to the other side, converting it into an injury token, removing all the damage, and removing one condition if applicable. If you're following along, this also means that now that there isn't a wounded token on the model, it can continue taking more damage. If at the end of the model's activation, which is significant, they have injury tokens equal to their durability, they are removed from play. Okay, that was a lot, but let's break down the implications. First, damage is capped. If I do 1,000,000 damage to Darth Maul, it doesn't really matter. It's going to convert into one wounded token no matter what. Furthermore, if I happen to have a number of injury tokens equal to my durability, I still get to play with the model at least once before it's removed from play, which is just a great quality of life idea. It might feel bad that you can't one-shot a model in this game, but remember, when you wound models, you make your win condition easier, so it's still very good. Each character feels highly unique with a ton of special abilities and traits like skirmish war games should have. There are many options for what each person can do, and they feel highly individualistic. Furthermore, each character card is double-sided, which represents a stance your model can take. Do you want to be more aggressive or more defensive this turn? You can choose by flipping your card. Lastly, each model has an activation tree. When you roll dice to attack an opponent's model, you take the number of net successes and travel down the tree, accumulating results. There are forks in the tree, so you get to choose as the player which direction you want to go, and the effects add up to one net result. The results are sometimes damage, but they're also sometimes totally different things. This reminds me so much of Guild Ball and how the attacking works in that game, and I am here for it. Instead of it being a carbon copy, however, it's been freshly reinterpreted, and I think it's a really fun idea. I love how there are more options than just killing your opponent in your decision tree. It really explodes open the design space. You could have a team that are really good at killing, or teams that are good at manipulating the opponent's position by pushing them off of objectives or off of terrain, or teams that have results in their tree that allow them to activate abilities on their card. The opportunities are endless. Well, team, those are the games that I'm most excited for in 2023, but what do you think? Were there elements of those games that you didn't like or other games you're more excited for? Let me know in the comment section below. If you guys and gals like miniature war games, consider tuning into my live stream on Twitch, linked down below. On the first and third Thursday of every month, we play a game from 7 to 10 p.m. CST. If you can't make it, I upload the VODs to the Miniac's backlog channel, also linked below. We play all kinds of games like Frostgrave, A Song of Ice and Fire, Age of Sigmar, and way more. If you guys like the channel and you want to support it, there are a number of ways you can do so. Most notably picking up some merch on my web store, like this sick cutting mat, or a t-shirt, or a model like the Duchess, and also the digital course that goes along with that model, teaching you how to paint the Mini stroke for stroke. You can also sign up to become a patron, which gets you a bunch of fun rewards, like a Discord server where you and I can hang out and chat about your miniature painting projects, or which game you're most excited for. You can also buy hobby tools that I recommend from the affiliate links in the description below. Subscribe or die! And most importantly, don't forget to paint more minis!